Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining this very, very interesting session. It's the CEO Conclave and the CEO Priority Conclave, which is focusing on prioritizing the technology to generate sustainable value to your customers. And who else to discuss but a very distinguished panel that we have today. And I would like to bring in the panel one by one. I will request all the panelists to join in one by one. Mr. Mahendra Nahata from Reliance Jio, Director, Reliance Jio.
Hello, I'm Mahendra Nahata.
Mr. Ajai Puri, Chief Operating Officer, India and Southeast Asia at Bharti Airtel.
Hi, this is Ajay here.
Hi. Mr. Neeraj Sharma, Managing Director at Accenture.
Hello everyone, this is Neeraj Sharma.
Mr. Saurabh Tewari, Chief Technology Officer at Dell.
Good evening, Saurabh Tewari here.
Mr. P. Balaji, Chief Regulatory and Corporate Affairs Officer at Vodafone Idea.
Hello, everybody.
And Mr. Manish from Sterlite Technologies, Chief Marketing Officer at Sterlite Technologies.
Hi, everyone. Manish from STL.
Yeah, STL. Hi, thank you everyone for joining in, and it's my privilege to be moderating such an important session. When it comes to, just to set a context, and before I ask a distinguished panelist some of the important questions which are relevant to the topic, I'd like to just set a context on why this topic is very important. India is at the cusp of digital revolution and disruption with more than 120 crore customers, wireless data usage of greater than 11 GB per customer per month, FDI inflows at its all-time high, tele-density which is greater than 85%, India having more than 600,000 towers, and a digital disruption which is being caused by multiple policies that are being introduced by the government, which is incentivizing not only the private sector, but also a lot of implementation in rural areas. It's very important to understand that India is the fastest growing telecom market in the world. To discuss the potential of the India story and also the technology disruption and a paradigm shift that is happening within telcos for the benefit of larger enterprises, I have a very distinguished panel, and I'd like to first start off with Mr. Nahata. Sir, India is having a tele-density of more than 85% average, but the rural density is around 59% only, which means penetration of digital in the rural area is requiring some amount of attention. There is lack of connectivity, and which is having an impact on other services that actually impact our rural population, which is digital infrastructure, etc., which can be easily enabled by the telecom operators. So the question to you, sir, is how can the telecom sector assist in creating a digitally inclusive society and create shareholder value at the same time? Very important question and very relevant in the current scheme of things, sir. Your views.
Thanks, Purushothaman. Digital inclusion is a journey to digital empowerment for the people of the country. Now, telecom sector's role is very important out here, because any digital inclusion needs connectivity and constant communication amongst people. Now, here the telecom sector has the most important role to play in providing broadband connectivity, and at the same point of time providing content in that connectivity, and third, most importantly, providing internet and broadband capable devices at a cheaper price. Now, telecom sector has a most important role to play in all these three areas. Now, in Indian context, as you rightly said, this removal urban and rural digital divide is very, very important. And telecom sector has to particularly work on that if that digital divide has to be ended. Jio recognized it much earlier. If you look at it today, Jio covers almost 95% population of the country with its 4G broadband. In the last 4 years alone, Indian broadband connectivity has increased almost 4 times, from 192 million to 726 million. Now, unless the telecom sector, not only Jio but everybody else, works together to see that every village of the country is covered by this broadband, we cannot say that it's a digitally inclusive society. And I think BharatNet is also going to play an important role in that, because government has announced, the Honorable Prime Minister himself has announced that all the country's villages would be linked by fiber optic cable in next 1,000 days. That's also a big step towards creating a digitally inclusive society with fiber. And I think with that empowerment to rural people of the country, the way they think, the way they work, and their education level, all are going to change. Now, the most important issue is how do you finish the rural and urban divide, create a digitally inclusive society, and yet create a shareholders' value. I do not think there is any contradiction in that. Sometimes people would assume that giving rural connectivity would mean erosion in profitability of the telco. But our experience has not shown that absolutely. Today, in rural areas also, the data consumption is 11 GB per month per subscriber, equivalent to what you have in urban areas. So, if you have a business model where you drive large scale usage of data at affordable price, where the more and more people can use it. What is broadband? Broadband is a pipe, a very large pipe. With the kind of technologies exist today, you can create a very large pipe. Now it's a question of you want to put few subscribers with a high price, or you want to fill up that pipe with more number of subscribers with a lower price. And the whole idea of inclusive society is more number of subscribers by a lower price. And that's what Jio has done. So, whereas you can serve customers at an affordable price to finish this digital divide, and I think you can very well create a shareholders value also without any problem. And Jio is a great example of that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nahata. Mr. Puri, I'll move on to you. I'll take over from where Mr. Nahata left, which is to say that telcos have created this pipe, and connectivity has been an integral part of the ecosystem that the telcos have created. But the ecosystem around the telcos and for the telcos also is undergoing a change. There is a technology disruption that's happening. Cloud computing and edge computing is becoming the new normal. How you service your own customers and how you're using cloud for your own implementation. So the question, sir, to you is, what are the key technologies that you believe will transform the Indian telecom sector in the next 5 years, not only for the telecom sector itself, but also for the customers that it will be servicing? Over to you, sir.
Yeah, Puru, I think I'm taking over from where Mr. Nahata left. Basically, I think Indian telecom industry has witnessed rapid growth, as you see in the last few years. First with the voice revolution, then with the data revolution, as the 4G got launched in 2000, starting with 2012 when Airtel launched its 4G services in Calcutta. And then we started rapidly rolling it out starting 2014, 2015. I think we are on a cusp of another, growth agenda, and this will be a 5G technology, that basically a new innovation, and this technological interventions have helped innovations in other allied sectors, has immensely contributed toward the economic development of the nation. And my understanding is 5G is going to only accelerate that path and that pace, with both for the country and the society at large. This technology will further usher in highly mobile and fully connected society, both urban and rural. The proliferation of connected objects and devices will pave way for a wide range of new services and associated business models, enabling automation in various industries, sectors, societies, and verticals. This would further propel and give impetus to Digital India program, and which will enable government of India's agenda of digitizing its own services and records and the whole works. And finally, it will help achieve Honorable Prime Minister's vision of Digital India. My only submission here is
Sure.
that in future, it is essential that both licensors and the regulators proactively and constructively work with the industry with a very light touch approach, and really help these technological initiatives and innovations to really get fueled in India. And in that context, industry needs to be supported by, whether it is about ease of doing business, putting up the new towers. 5G will really need densification of towers, for far more than what it is being done for the 4G, laying the fiber both intra-cities and intercities, rationalization of taxes and levies, and uh, you know creating large spectrum pools at affordable prices. So I think the entire ecosystem has to work together to really bring in these technologies together, as they come in, and this will really generate the connected society, which will finally propel India from a 2 trillion, near 2 trillion, 2.5 trillion economy to a 5 trillion economy, has been envisaged. The key role that this will play is in the transformation are things like edge technology, edge cloud computing, hyperscale connectivity embedded by both 4G and in future by the 5G, wireless fiber-like connectivity to industries and homes and individual customers and enterprises, video surveillances, things like analytics, Internet of Things, AI, VI, machine learning. All these will be the tools that will get used by the industry and individuals as we go forward. And this will all happen on the back of telcos investing in this big market of growth.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Puri. I'll try to now get Mr. Puri explain the role of the ecosystem partners in this growth phase. I'll try to get an external perspective from Neeraj, who is part of whose organization is also part of the ecosystem that supports in the digital transformation. Neeraj, if I were to get your perspective on the role of the digital transformation of the end customers with the connected ecosystem is the next phase of digital disruption that you're going to cause with the customers. My question to you is very specifically, what are the areas in which technology players and telecom operators can collaborate to enhance this customer value, and what would be that that collaboration look like, and how is that transforming?
Okay. There are so many areas because telcos still are at the center of customers' lives, as Mr. Puri also mentioned. Connecting various people with various services, various opportunities, and therefore the promise of telcos essentially is the promise of a better tomorrow. It is very difficult for any one player, even one telecom player, to fulfill that promise. And collaboration with ecosystem players, not just technology players, but the entire ecosystem, is going to be a key for telcos to deliver on that promise of better tomorrow. So, for example, in consumer space, this collaboration can help develop better understanding of an individual customer and then use that understanding to deliver a greater experience. Less than a decade ago, telcos knew more about an individual customer than anyone else did. But now, due to digital proliferation, a food delivery app, for example, probably knows as much about that customer as the telco does, right? And this food delivery app or any other app, for example, for that matter, they carry different information about that customer than the telco does. Tech players can be a bridge between telcos and such third parties. Take the example of the open audience platform in the US, or a similar audience aggregation platform launched by a telco called NOS in Portugal, where a telco, a cable provider, a fintech firm, and an e-commerce player are coming together to put their respective customers into one common pool, and therefore each of the participants of that consortium, if you want to call it, each of the participants has a significantly greater reach in Portugal and a much better understanding of each of those customers. So now they can serve the customer significantly better. In the enterprise space, if you want to take that example further, cloud-based capabilities like edge computing, IoT, SaaS enablement are some key use cases where tech and telco collaboration will bring newer services to customers at a fraction of earlier costs. And this is especially important for SMBs and SOHOs. Given the current macroeconomic environment, a lot of people will be encouraged to become self-sufficient, nirbhar, right? So you'll see a lot of people trying to build a 2%, 3% company. Uh, and that's a very noble goal, but it is easier said than done, because setting up a business, a basic business also, it requires a fair bit of basic tech availability, regulatory compliance assurance, and most importantly, access to markets. Telco plus technology player collaboration can play a massive role in enabling the setup of those businesses and the discovery of customers for such businesses. Telecom South Africa has created a very nice SMB marketplace that might be worth considering for Indian telcos as well. Back to you, Puru.
Great. Great. Thank you, Neeraj. The message that I get from you is seamless connectivity and seamless service. That's how you will bring in the different players of the ecosystem. Balaji, if I could move to you and and carrying over this discussion and in the right context on how multiple telcos, including Vodafone India, has provided seamless service even during COVID and beyond. But we are talking about the future. So when it comes to the future, what kind of technology interventions can telecom players make to enhance the customer experience? And how do you see this role evolving in the coming years to see? And what do you think is evolving in this scale?
Thank you very
Yeah,
much,
Balaji.
Purushothaman. I think Mr. Nahata and Ajay, thank you so much. So I think Mr. Nahata and Ajay had pretty much outlined the way the industry has stepped up to the plate. Indian consumers are extremely aspirational, and the digital stacks that we have created as a nation is fantastic, because the government and the Prime Minister set an agenda for digital India, digital inclusion. So we have connectivity to over a billion people. We have a UPI platform which allows for 2 billion transactions per month. We have the UIDI platform that again allows for authentication in a very, very seamless manner. Now, obviously, with that kind of aspiration, when the pandemic hit us, as an industry, we shaped up extremely well. Our network warriors, including Vodafone Idea, did whatever was required to build up huge capacity in newer territories. Homes became workplaces, so we had to make sure that capacity was added in new places as industry, which was not there anywhere else, right? So we had to do that within days, within hours. We saw, and I'm sure every other player saw, the traffic in 1 week go up what had gone up 1 year in those geographies, which are more the home areas, because traffic was moving very rapidly there. And so at times like this, massive and upgradation of cell sites with capacity was done at population scale, and therefore the industry continued to support the digital journey of this country and the economic journey of this country, which is what the government expected from us. Now, clearly, as you rightly said, if the aspiration of customers is to add more and more to their digital lives, then we also as industry have to use technology interventions. So each industry player has responsibly invested huge amount of money in creating capacity to drive the industry forward and for the citizens' benefit. So technology like massive MIMO, and we have a very large deployment in Vodafone Idea of massive MIMO, cloud-based networking, which is something that Ajay and Mr. Nahata talked about, network function virtualization. All of these are done software-defined networking, adopting open source standards, open RAN, etc. All of these are technology interventions that we are doing in order to make sure that consumers in India get the best possible service at affordable prices. And I think that's really where the biggest investment of the industry as a whole and has come about. Then is the people, which apart from the network investment, the people, right? We as industry invest in the people invest in using these technologies to serve the consumer better. And so whether it's tools that make services available of customer care or otherwise at every platform that the consumer goes to, including WhatsApp. These are innovations that we make in India in order to serve our customers better. So, for example, in our company, we have the artificial intelligence-based WhatsApp bot, just to help customers if they get stuck in their digital journey in any manner of form or fashion. Then I think earlier speakers talked about the big data and analytics. So when we talk about 5G and the massive India use cases which will drive Industry 4.0 and applications of a different nature, because we as industry, we as company have made sure that we've invested in the analytics and big data, we are in very good position to make sure that when the movement takes place of Industry 4.0, then whatever the vertical is there, we are as industry, as company able to serve the enterprise customers in a very seamless manner. And these investments that we are making as industry will further enhance the the journey of India as a leader in the digital revolution. And so we are quite convinced that the right investments are being made, and with the support of the government, their policies, and the regulator, I'm sure the next step of the journey of enhancing customer experience using technology will only become that much stronger. Over to you.
Thank you, thank you, Balaji. I think you made a very important point on making it very real and making it very relevant for the customer. And you also made a very important reference to 5G. India is very unique. It's not you don't have operators who have greenfield operations that are coming up. You have brownfield operations that are coming up, and that makes the entire task of implementation very unique, at the same time very challenging as well. So Saurabh, if I can move on to you, with reference to 5G and 5G becoming imminent, what steps should be taken to develop the 5G ecosystem in the Indian context, especially considering the requirements of the 5G infrastructure and also some of the standards. Balaji spoke about the open standards, open RAN standards that are also implementable, but it's a process. So, what do you think needs to be done to bring in the implementation, interoperability, as well as innovation in the implementation? Over to you, Saurabh.
Thank you, Puru. So, what Mr. Puri said and what Mr. Nahata said and what Mr. Balaji said, look, the common point over here essentially is having a rich and diverse ecosystem of multi-vendor components. Now, those components, what ties them together? So you have node 1 coming from vendor X, node 2 coming from vendor Y, and node 3 coming from vendor Z. What is it that ties them together? That's essentially standards. The standards are what enable, they're actually the foundation of interoperability in a rich and diverse telecom infrastructure ecosystem. Now, in addition to that, what we must also understand is, as a country, we need to basically adhere to certain standards that are which are being implemented across the world in terms of spectrum bands, in terms of the quantum of spectrum, in terms of and I should say this, the cost of spectrum also. So in India, the cost of spectrum is between 9 and 46 times the cost of spectrum anywhere else. So quantum cost should be rationalized. That's number one. Number two, what Mr. Nahata and what Mr. Puri also said was fiber. Okay, so all the benefits that a new 5G, new radio standard, basically brings in, which is, and now if you actually touched upon it, enhanced mobile broadband, ultra reliable low latency communications, the multi-edge cloud. All of these will benefit tremendously from fiberized base stations. I mean, you could still run all of that on traditional microwave backhaul, but it can't match fiber's bandwidth, which enables a full cloud RAN. Okay, the full cloud RAN architecture is cost effective, it's flexible, It provides the best user experience and significantly reduces the network's carbon footprint. I mean, right now you have solutions where you have generators almost on every site. What you could do is essentially do away with those generators and put in a lithium-ion battery pack and just reduce pollution. Okay. Look, we've been building. Okay. Over the last few years, we've been building the best in breed of road infrastructure, world-class roads, world-class highways. I hope we are adding ducts for fiber along with those for power, water, gas on every kilometer of that. I mean, it not only protects the road, but it also accelerates network deployment while keeping costs low, right? I mean, and all of this, what is it going to result in? A beautiful economy, a fantastic infrastructure that can, for example, COVID is what is having, what is wreaking havoc. Okay, I mean, of course, things have stabilized, but it did what it could. I mean, we're still not won the battle. We still have to distribute vaccines. We still have to maintain cold chains. Okay, so and we still have to, check the progress of those inoculated by correlating those vaccine batch numbers to those individuals, and they're of course figuring out how they're sort of doing. In addition to that, automated AI-based real-time monitoring of CCTV footage for traffic and criminal violations. I mean, the use cases that 5G enables can truly accelerate our country's progress dramatically across all industry verticals. Okay, thanks. Back to you, Puri.
Thank you. Saurabh, I'm going to use the first part of your discussion on infrastructure and move to Manish. Manish, who else can discuss about infrastructure and optical fiber, more better than you? When it comes to, fiber, approximately 22 lakh optical fiber kilometers have been deployed, with another 30 lakhs which is expected. And digital communication infrastructure is so critical and central for continued economic growth. So my question to you, and also taking over from what Saurabh has said, is what do you think India should be doing differently to improve the digital infrastructure to address some of the unique challenges? I saw Balaji also smiling when there was a discussion by Saurabh. There are challenges, and how best do you think it can be addressed? If you could throw some light on that from your experience.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think everyone here on the panel, Balaji, Saurabh, Nahata, Mr. Puri, Neeraj gave examples from outside, is absolutely clearly understanding of the need of this infrastructure. And I think this year has possibly made it even more stark, right? We started this year with less than 50% of the world being connected on the internet, and now it's about 60%. It's the fastest moving year in terms of internet connectivity. The first 50% we all know took 25 years. The latest 10% has taken almost less than a year. It's crazy how infrastructure is starting to move fast, and yet on the other hand, Saurabh, you talked about fiber. Fiber is actually the best carrier of information in terms of the volume and latency, which is extremely important for 5G to work, right? And yet at the same time, we are actually, as a globe, not just as India, not actually having fully utilized its benefit as if yet. I mean, on the other hand, in India, certainly we are lagging behind. We have been, we have our Reliance, Airtel, Vodafone Idea all sitting here, and they have all been working hard to change it. And yet, at this time, we are certainly materially behind different parts. Like if you look at what is the experience in Korea, it's a whole different level. And at the FTTH, we are sub 5% reach to FTTH. And some of us who are experienced, I know most of us are lucky enough to experience some kind of FTTH at home, are able to do what we are doing today. But in India today, COVID, where you do not have connectivity, has actually created that extreme deep digital divide, right? I mean, there are people in my house today, each room is a different office or school. And then there are people who cannot go to office and school today. It has just brought their life to a grinding halt. So at one level, this has been a year of massive movement of getting people onto the internet. On the other side, more than half of our country has not even got access. And more than 40% of the world still doesn't have access. And there are different technologies, and you asked me a question, Puru, and I think Saurabh said the thing about how can we do it fast. And I just want to throw some stats at you, right? As like I said, apart from China, most of the world is less than about 20%, and India is about 1 to 2% FTTH connectivity. Our towers do not have fiber. More than 30% of towers don't, and that Mr. Nahata and Mr. Puri, you can correct me. I know this number keeps changing. And I know that Balaji did mention that regardless of the fact that all traffic moved, our industry moved hell and high water to get I'm sitting at home, thankfully able to go to work because you guys actually made it happen. So that number might have moved, but we were still in the sub 30s, the beginning of this period. So we don't have towers connected all that much. We don't have homes connected all that much. We're talking about 5G at one level. And there is another statistic that's very important. Our country spends only about $13 billion, I might be again off here and there, on digital infrastructure creation, right? And if you were to look at it, that's about 0.5% of our current economy. And if you look at larger countries, the Chinas, the USAs of the world, best being Finland, which got ranked number 1 in the Network Readiness Index, they are, even after having materially reached connectivity, are spending upwards of 2 to 2.5% of their economy's GDP on connectivity, right? And why is it? Why is it? Because they are just rich? No, I think because they actually understand that this is the most fundamental infrastructure today, right? There was a time when America took a stand and said, we would connect each city, each village of America through a massive network of highways. And that actually led to America changing from just an average country at the beginning of 100 years ago to, Trump and Biden set aside, the number 1 country in the world today, right? And I think that is the standing moment we stand on. The beauty of where we stand today is that we really don't need to be number 1 in physical infrastructure. But if we act, and that is extremely difficult, right? Trust me, we run in our company the physical part of digital infrastructure. You talked about ducts, you talked about, that is crazy difficult, right? But once that is set up, a doctor can go through a pipe to a village and help someone there and come back, right? We have 600,000 doctors less in our country than should be as per WHO required. And 70% of our doctors live in urban areas. They don't want to go to the rural areas. I don't blame them. My sister's a doctor. I understand what happens when you go to a rural area. But they can sweep and get into a rural area very quickly. Not just healthcare, education, right? If you do education, at the same cost of educating 1 child, you can educate 6 with digital. I don't know where my hand comes in. Okay, here. And the cost of digital infrastructure is being the same, gives you twice the return and 2 times the speed in terms of your economic multiplier. So if you're talking of going from $2.7 trillion of an economy to $5 trillion, and which of us here don't want to stand in that $5 trillion club? All of us do. It has to be the silver bullet, has to be digital infrastructure. Now you can't do that unless we move from what we are spending, which is $10 and $11 billion today, to $35 billion. And it is not just fiber, okay? It's all components, everything has to be set up. That's the thing I think we need to do. So you asked Puru, and I would say, I want to leave like 3 core thoughts here for us, which is a mind shift that we need to have as a country. Number 1 is that we need to think digital lifestyle and not telecom communication. There was a time when telephones were for talking. Now digital is for education, entertainment, healthcare, gyms. Think of anything we're doing. It's a digital lifestyle. Second thing is we need to think citizen and not consumer. Consumers only become, citizens become consumers as the economy grows. Some of our villages, and the Prime Minister has said Digital India and Ghar Tak Fiber to 6.5 lakh villages, but there are citizens there. They are not yet high ARPU customers. So we have to think citizens, not consumers. And then the third one is, as India, we have a chance to think like winners and not players. One interesting fact I would like to say is that half of the world that is not yet connected is actually a lot more like India than it is like America. It is us who understand how to handle dense slum connectivity, not America, right? And right now, all the technologies that is being moved around the world is basically coming from those economies. This is the time when India's ability to build affordable technology, not just for fiber, but also for 5G, right? We have to take the virtualized open technology space, crack it in India, and then make it happen in South Africa, make it happen in Middle East and North Africa. There are parts of the world that should see India as a leader. Yes, we have to move today from unconnected to connected, but we can also make the move from being behind to being ahead. I mean, I think this is 25 years of telecom. We can rule the next 25. When I say we, I genuinely mean Geo, Airtel, BSNL, if they were here today, Voda Idea. You guys have, I think, the opportunity and responsibility of a lifetime. And at STL, with our fiber and our programmability and all of that stuff, we like to stand behind that. Back to you, Puru.
Thank you, Manish. And in the interest of time, and just to focus on the very important topic that we started off with, which was prioritizing technology for sustainable value, I will quickly go around the table on just asking one question to everyone, which is on for all this to happen and for the spend that Manish also spoke about, business models have to be revisited. So I'll just go around the table, and if all the distinguished panelists can just spend a minute on what are your views on how are the business models undergoing a change with this kind of disruption happening. I'll start with Mr. Nahata. Sir, from your perspective, what is imperative for the business, the changing business model, and what would be the advice to not only the CEOs but also to the ecosystem partners, because they have to work together with you?
Look, business models have started changing. If you look at the business model, education business, for example, delivery business, e-commerce business, education, healthcare, everywhere the business models have changed, and they are going to change even further more rapidly. And it is because of the technology availability. As it was pointed out, that education, it is being delivered remotely now. Even the rural areas, children can have the best of the education, best of the lectures available. Healthcare business, again, it's changing quite a lot. Agriculture, with the invent of IoT, narrowband IoT, agriculture business is going to change quite a lot. Entertainment business, that's changing a lot. So technology would drive those changes. And people who adapt to those technological changes will be more successful in business rather than the people who do not adapt to these technological changes. So as 5G comes in, more number of use cases are being there. For example, in medicine, we are today talking about doctor probably looking at the reports and some more diagnostics remotely and trying to prescribe some medicines to a patient. But tomorrow time will come with 5G, remote surgeries would be done. And doctors sitting in Delhi or probably sitting in New York would be doing surgery on somebody in some rural areas in India. So these are the changes which are going to happen and which are going to drive business models in a completely different way. And people, if they don't change, I think they will lag behind. And people who change, they will prosper. And the important thing which is going to happen here, innovation is going to be driving every business. And what it would mean is that even a startup company or couple of people, 2, 3, 4, 5 people, would become billions of dollars of worth of company, unicorns, as we have seen in India, a number of cases that has happened. So that is another big change which is going to happen, that innovative people, young people, people sitting in rural areas maybe, but who are having innovation, they will become more successful in business, just rather than the people who just keep on working on the old style. That's what my take is.
Mr. Puri, what are your views? How does telco and the ecosystem get the right ROI for the investments that we're talking about? Because it's not going to be easy. It's not going to be quick.
Yeah, Puru. In fact, I think before I even get to there, I'll just say that it's not only about technology. Technology is obviously going to make all the changes. But beyond that, I think we need to be very sensitive about the customer experience. Finally, it is all about delivering an experience to the expectation. And the third piece, which is equally important, is the creating a partner ecosystem. See, we cannot, as telcos, we cannot do everything ourselves. What we need to do is work with the device manufacturers, work with the content creators, work with the technology solution providers, and create many more solutions innovatively, both for enterprise customers, business customers, and for the individual users. So I think as long as we acknowledge that this is one area where telcos have to work with the larger ecosystem, using the technology and keeping the customer at the heart of everything, I think we can deliver a very unique experience, and that's where I think we start to win. I mean, just to take an example on technology side, I think it's also a matter of saying what is the right time for what. For instance, when it came to shutting down 3G services across the country, Airtel was the first when we realized that the ecosystem is moving rapidly. Device ecosystem has changed to LTE and 4G. We were the first to shut down the entire 3G infrastructure and convert it to more efficient 4G infrastructure. When it comes to 2G, we're doing the same thing with the spectrum pools. However, there is a large chunk of India consumers who are still on the 2G networks, who are still using voice services, and therefore they want, and they would want to have that, that services could continue to stay for a while. Uh, I think the telco's role is building platform, building ecosystem, uh, where we can bring service providers together. Our own example of Airtel Extreme, Airtel Wing, and our partnership with and on the enterprise sides with Cisco's and many other service providers are great examples of creating platforms and providing, uh, you know, platforms for the OTT services, content, and many other services, both at an individual level or at enterprise level, be it an IoT services or cloud gaming or
Sure.
whatever.
Thank you, Mr. Puri.
So I would say it's all about working together and creating a digital agenda for the country.
Working together and creating a digital agenda. Neeraj, if I could ask your quick views on how is the ecosystem business models undergoing a change, and your closing thoughts around that.
Sure. See, and how I'll probably broaden that question a little bit more by saying how are telcos changing that ecosystem model. What's happening right now is that in terms of core connectivity as well as digital services, I think the problem of availability, accessibility, and affordability, that problem has always remained there. In the area of core connectivity, telcos have done an admirable job in solving in all three areas, whether it is availability, accessibility, or affordability. But in terms of digital services themselves, we talked about education, healthcare, everything there, that even though ecosystem players like startups and others, they are creating those services, these services are still not very neither accessible nor affordable at mass scale. I mean, yeah, some urban consumers with the right devices, with the right amount of money, can access all those ed tech courses by paying 30,000 rupees per annum for math and science only. But how do we ensure that a digital school, not just math and science courses, but an entire digital school is available to 50 million, 5 crore Indian students at 100 rupees a month kind of a cost? And that's where telcos will play a big role, because they will bring in much wider reach, like I talked earlier as well, a much wider reach, as well as the kind of evolution that can be brought in. So Mr. Puri talked about the role Wink and Extreme is playing in terms of aggregating content for entertainment. Similarly, that kind of aggregation and a revised model will have to be executed for all of these other services: education, healthcare, government services, financial services. And that's the kind of role which the whole ecosystem will need to play. So ecosystem will become an input into what the telcos will enable.
Thank you, Neeraj. So we heard innovation, we heard startups, we heard changing business models and telcos driving it. Balaji, if I can move on to you and hear your closing thoughts on what is your recommendation when it comes to telco's role in changing the business models, and how is it actually transformed?
I think the understanding of technology, innovation, creation of platforms and partnerships is the way forward, as earlier speakers have indicated quite lucidly. And all of us have made the transformation. If you look at our own company, Vodafone Idea, uh, we've kind of morphed into a telco plus plus play, and clearly it's about that's where the customers want us to move towards. Collaborate with the best across verticals, provide the right kind of content and applications and services, whether it's healthcare, fitness, whether it's education, or even business help, even if it's security services. It's about getting the best of breed on a platform and handing it over. And so that's what customers are looking for, and we need to transform. And we are, as an industry, transforming quite rapidly, and therefore becoming relevant to them. If you're relevant to customers, then you're part of the digital trillion economy that the government wants to create, and which will get done, no question about it. So stay relevant to customers, whether they are individuals or enterprises, whether it's citizens or they're consumers. So that becomes the important thing. And then, of course, a little focus that we need to do in terms of looking at the next 500 million people. In the end, that's also part of the journey that we have to, as telcos, play an important part by taking the ecosystem to them. And here again, partnerships are very critical. So if we make smart devices more affordable to current non-smartphone users to upgrade, then that's useful. That requires collaboration with OEMs. It requires collaboration with financial institutions, because no one wants to buy a device which is sub-optimal. Because if they have to get access to the services that we have described as a panel so far, then they need to have good devices. And therefore, partnerships with financing institutions and OEMs is very critical. Then digital and financial inclusion programs. We ourselves, through our experience, been able to touch the lives of 10 million people in digital and in financial literacy programs, in able to catalyze through virtual means. If one organization can get 15, 20,000 schools and 200,000 teachers, 200,000 students, together to experience it in this virtual world, then imagine the power of collaboration across the entire ecosystem, what it can do. Smart agri, I think, was talked about. The opportunities are tremendous. It is just about getting down to saying what we do is to create the tool set and the platform and allow for innovators to come in and partner to solve the problems and the opportunities at mass scale.
Thank you, Balaji. I'll quickly move to Saurabh. Your closing thoughts when it comes to the changing business models, as well as what are your recommendations on the key imperatives.
Right. So, look, absolutely aligned to what all the other panelists have said. Here's the thought: telcos have the almost enviable position of being omnipresent. They are the closest to an individual, regardless of where that individual is staying. If he's in a city, he's got a cell site maybe a few hundred, 500 meters away from him. If he's in a village, the most rural of the villages, the site will be, say, a couple of kilometers away from them. So those assets can be really exploited using uh, artificial intelligence, accelerators, okay, machine learning, to provide a plethora of services that all of the panelists have just mentioned. Okay, so they're not just a bit pipe. They're not just a pipe. They can be an incredibly intelligent vehicle of development across the country. Okay, I mean, no one else has that kind of presence. It's taken them decades to build that infrastructure. Okay. And connecting it, as Manish also mentioned, I mean, fiberizing all of that is only going to make that entire process a whole lot more easier. And the services will be a lot more diverse, a lot more rich, and a lot more, the subscriber experience is going to be unparalleled. Similarly, you know, what we also need to keep in mind is security. Okay, we have been facing external threats. Okay, we're not going to go into those details, but 5G can bring in something pretty cool, which is called network slicing, right?
Yeah.
So you have a slice of network which can be used for education, which can be used by emergency responders, which can be used by banks and financial institutions, which can perhaps even be one day used to track the status of our water reservoirs, okay, the natural resources that we have through drones and so many other things. So the possibilities are truly limitless if we can conserve resources, automate, and connect. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. So, Saurabh, you spoke about, I think, very, very important areas. Manish, I'll just request your closing thoughts on what are your suggestions on the key imperatives from a business model perspective.
Sure. Not much I can add after all the clear answers here. So I'd just say two words. One is freemium. The other is, as I think Ajay talked about, mostly experience. So and if I explain, seems like if we want to get everyone online, it's not going to be affordable by everyone. But one thing that we have seen in the digital world is a lot of consumers are actually not the customers, but they are creating a networked experience. So a freemium experience for them will make the whole country grow. And similarly, like we have to be inclusive in the customer set, the ecosystem point, extremely important. It is impossible to create an experience unless you are with an ecosystem. So that's the whole business model. Freemium, collaborative, ecosystem-driven experience. And
Thank you, Manish. With those words, I'd like to just conclude the session. I thank all the fellow panelists. I'll just add one last word to this: frictionless. And frictionless would be something that that the customers would love at affordable prices that we all spoke about. With that, I'd like to thank all the panelists, my distinguished panelists. Thank you very much for joining this session and sharing your insights. Thank you.
Thanks so much for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.